And 7 p.m. President Ziegler.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We're holding the meeting via Zoom due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The president has determined it's not prudent for the board of managers to meet in person. For some reason, it says March 5th, but it's March 1st meeting. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. I believe the first thing on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Do we have any motions regarding the agenda?
I'll move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
one moment, please. I need to check, call up my agenda here. Here we go. There we go. So I would like to remove from the agenda, or at least the consent items, item E, the 6E and 6G. And then I will, if we have an agreement or understanding that we can, sorry about that, we can discuss the staff report and the engineer's report during the latter part where we have the administrator report. I will leave those on the consent agenda to the extent they just require the acceptance of receipt of those reports.
Just so I have it correct on my notes, you said E and G.
That
I'd
is
like
correct.
to move those to action items.
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the agenda? Okay, I'm assuming that's a friendly amendment.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Smith?
On approving the agenda, Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is matters of public interest. Welcome to the board meeting. Anyone may address the board on any matter of interest in the watershed. Speakers will be acknowledged by the president. Please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. State your name and address for the record. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Additional comments may be submitted in writing. Generally, the Board of Managers will not take official action on items discussed at this time, but may refer the matter to staff for further report or direct that the matter be scheduled on a future agenda. Do we have anyone from the public who'd like to speak tonight?
President Ziegler, I'm not seeing any hands up in the panorama of windows.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next item then. The next item is reading and approval of the minutes of the February 1st regular meeting.
I move we approve the minutes of the February 1st, 2023 regular board meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion or corrections on the February 1st regular meeting minutes?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I just need to report my, and I apologize, I'm reading on my other screen. Report that it was my understanding that it was agreed to that these minutes would come out within 10 days after the holding of the meeting so that we could review them and provide input back. Given that that is not occurring, I'm going to vote no.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or revisions to the minutes?
I don't think I had anything this time.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote? Mr. Smith? You're on mute. Mr. Smith, you're on mute.
On approval of the minutes, Manager Crafton,
Yeah, oh, I did find one on line 560. Crass has got 2 S's. But yes, I vote to approve the minutes or accept.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
No,
Manager Pedersen,
Yes,
President Siegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the February 16th work session of the Board of Managers. Do I have a motion on this item?
I'll move the minutes as submitted.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any discussions or corrections on the February 16th work session?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I have the same objections to the approval of the minutes for the work session.
Okay, any other discussion?
Yeah, I had one line 166. It just doesn't run right. Manager Crafton responded, her take is what the district sets in terms of what the cannot, so I think it means her take is that what the district sets for the levy cannot be increased.
Yeah.
So in terms of what the would be eliminated and replaced with for the levy. That was all I had.
Okay, I think that's a friendly amendment. I see Manager Duval is scratching his head. Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
On approval of the February 16th minutes, Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
No,
Manager Pedersen,
I have to abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
okay. President Siegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1 with 1 abstention.
Mr.
Okay.
President. Oh, excuse me.
Manager Cook?
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interjected you said. I apologize.
Okay, the next item is the committee reports. I believe the first thing is the Citizens Advisory Committee report and minutes. Do we have?
Hi, I'm here today, Sharon McCatter, to do an update. We had a great meeting in February, just actually last week. And I think one of the great things, Terry was able to start us out with a review of the district rules. And then after he departed, Scott continued. And I think for me, what personally made it really great, because I've heard these rules a few times before. And so to make it kind of interesting and something different, Scott actually took the Xcel Energy Service Center project and walked us through what the impact of that project could be on the rules, just to help people kind of understand how complex it is. And I came away with a even more better understanding and more comfortable that we have the rules we have to protect what we have. So it seems like you can always learn something with that. So that was a great presentation. I think got a lot of positive feedback from people. And then Jill presented, gave to us an article on a new water paradigm and suggesting that we take a look at it, kind of a long article. If it was in paper, I'd probably be more inclined to do it, but 92 pages online for me is a little long. But I may end up deciding to print it because I started reading it and it was interesting. It's just to be nice to highlight or make some notes. So thank you, Jill, for bringing that to us. We didn't have any recommendations for you, and I don't believe we had anything from you in terms of requests. There was one thing that came up about, do we record the CAC meetings? No, we don't. We aren't required to at this time, although the presentations are all recorded. And I think, Terry, you had maybe already given that information to the managers, and we just didn't know, is this one person who wanted a recording? Is this a request from everyone on the managers? Is this something you want us to act to? Liz did say, just to be aware that there's increased staff time involved. So if it's just to do it, probably not worth the time. But if there's a reason to do it, we can take that back to the CAC and have them take a look at it. So I think those were the highlights. There were other things that were postponed that we're kind of anxious to know about and get rescheduled and some things like that and get dates on the calendar. The intern as well that we have now. So, I mean, we have some things going and started, but we're looking if there's anything in specific you'd like from us. We'd be more than happy to jump in. So any questions?
Yes, I just have one comment on the recording. As you know, it's up to you to decide if you want to record or not. And the whole board didn't, we talked about it, but we didn't bring it to a vote or reach a consensus, is my memory. Manager Cook?
Yes, Mr. President. Well, first of all, comment is I'm glad to hear that there was a recording of the presentations. Be interested in hearing from Administrator Jeffrey where they're located and what we're going to do with them. I personally would like to have the meetings recorded because give me an opportunity at other times to listen in and see what the various discussions were, who participates and what, so that if and when it comes to either discussing an issue or reappointing members, I would have a better feel for how I should maybe act or vote on that basis. I have a question though for you and or the CAC. As I understand it, you don't have any specific asks at this time. ASKS.
I don't believe that we came back that from your last meeting that the person coming back said that we had a specific thing you wanted us to do, but maybe I missed it. Was there something?
No, the ask is, do you have an ask for the board?
Oh, we did not at this time, although Marilyn, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but that section on the fragile and ecologically vulnerable areas, I don't know if, we didn't make any motions, but was there anything you wanted to highlight in that area or in another topic?
Well, we did make a motion in February of 2022, and we have not heard back unless it's kind of being folded into the ecological health assessment project.
Yes.
Well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook,
well, from my own perspective, I would like to see the CAC follow up on the request until the managers have affirmatively said yes, no, or forget about it. And I think that's a good process. Shouldn't that, in my opinion, shouldn't necessarily be waiting on the managers to remember what you requested or deal with them, because it's been my experience, we have enough trouble remembering to deal with items that come up at our own meeting. So that's just a suggestion from my perspective. Also, just one add-on comment about, I think it would be a good idea to record these, because not only for me, but I would hope that there are other citizens who can't meet the meetings, who might want to listen to the meetings, particularly if there's a particular topic. I believe this is, recording meetings, my understanding is getting to be fairly standard, at least with counties and cities. And I think that's just a good governance and good interaction with the public. So those are the only comments I have. Thank you. Oh, by the way, this for President Ziegler. Do we have a resolution for accepting the minutes? A written resolution?
No,
I don't know.
no, we do not.
Okay,
Well, at this point, maybe I'd like to suggest that staff consider coming up with a resolution that might cover acceptances for all the committees. Basically a form and a checkbox, so that if there are no minutes, obviously we don't check that, but if we have reports and minutes from other committees, it's a simple matter of checking the box and then approving the adoption of the resolution. So that's just a suggestion. That's it. Thank you.
okay, I see a hand up, Mrs. McCotter.
A couple questions, Larry, or Manager Cook, just to clarify. So when you were saying the resolution in writing for the committees, are you talking about the subcommittees that are going to be formed on the CAC?
No, I'm sorry, that probably wouldn't be a bad idea for the CAC, but CAC can decide it. I was talking from the Board of Managers perspective. We have, or may have, reports from any of, one, two, three, at least three, well, 4 committees. And so my suggestion was to make things go faster. We would have a form of resolution that would list, the various committees and whether they had reports or minutes, and we could just check the boxes for those that have it. And that, assuming that we approve it, we would have just one resolution. I think it would save time. So that was for our internal consideration, but certainly CAC is welcome to consider that as well.
Okay, and I just had one other clarifying thing. I think it's a good idea. You're saying, if I understood it right, was that you're suggesting that when we come with motions, if we don't get an answer, we should be keeping a running total of when we come and what the motion is. And then if we don't get an answer, then the next month when the new person comes back, they should bring this and say, this is the one we have from last month or from last year, whatever. So is that how you wanted? I just wanted to make sure I understand the mechanics when I bring this back. And if this is what all the managers want versus just one person, just so I make sure I'm representing it equitably.
Well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook,
can I respond? Well, that, Mr. Cotter, I mean, that's my view of it. I'm not speaking for any of the other managers, but if we don't want it to get lost forever, because as I said, we have our own problems of, following up with things that we discussed. That would be a recommendation. That would be helpful to me because I don't personally track them. And I'm very interested in what the CAC does, and I'm very interested to make sure that we at least deal with whatever the CAC may bring to the board in one of three, manners. Yes, no, or we're not going to deal with it. So that's my own personal position of that.
So I think it makes sense to keep a list of kind of open items that haven't been addressed. Because I believe that Manager Cook is right. It's easy for us to lose track of things. And I
Sounds
believe
like a
that,
good
yeah, I believe that Terry was indicating that this is getting rolled into the Healthy Soils program, and that's why it's been taking so long on the critical or vulnerable habitat within the watershed district. But, just because that's our intent, if we don't have it on a list somewhere, it's still possible for it to get lost again or get lost.
Thank you.
Do any other managers have feelings or a comment one way or the other?
President,
Manager Duval, I don't see
think-
you, but I heard you.
um, my picture is showing
Oh,
there.
you're visible to everybody.
Yeah,
now.
you're there now.
Okay. I think, let's see here. I think Manager Crafton had her hand up before mine.
I did.
I'll
Took it
let her,
down.
I'll let her speak first.
Okay. So they do, the Citizen Advisory Committee, they're when there's a presentation like the one Scott and Terry did, that is recorded. I believe that's what Liz says, that they do record all those presentations. But the members of the committee weren't real comfortable. They wanted to be able to have a free discussion and just bring stuff up. And they thought they could get better participation if they weren't recording the whole meeting. So doing the presentations is definitely the substance of that anyway. So I'm having trouble hearing Manager Cook. I don't know if anybody else is. It maybe it's just because I'm congested. So my ears.
I am.
Yes,
I will look into it.
Manager Duval, did you have other additional comments?
yeah, just, I guess I would comment in general favor of Manager Cook's and your comments about having some kind of a checklist. I guess just reading through the minutes and things, I see a number of things from meeting to meeting that seem like they get lost. And so some kind of a checklist, I think, would be really helpful for continuity for the different groups. And so I'm in total agreement with that if we could have something like that, and I'm not sure that it requires or what the protocol would be to do that, if it's just something we just initiate, or does it require action at the CAC or even on our board for that matter.
Good. Any further comments? Otherwise, we have a next item is to confirm the board representative for the February, oh, that date's not right, for the next CAC meeting.
I would do that.
It's the March 20th.
Okay. My notes say February, but that can't be right. Okay, Manager Duval will do that. I think that's what he said.
Yes,
Okay. So then the next item on the agenda is to receive the governance committee report and minutes. And I believe the minutes were think we're a month behind. But the minutes from the prior meeting were, when Amy was there, were written and attached to the board packet. And I believe that was fairly, we haven't approved them officially, but I believe they were fairly complete. The most recent meeting, we're going through all of the suggestions from the CAC and from the managers, mostly Manager Cook. And that's going to take us some time. Attorney Smith is also going through them. And it looks like our upcoming meeting got postponed by a couple of weeks. And I'm not sure why, but you know, it is what it is, right? If we're not ready for the meeting, or yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. Attorney Smith couldn't make it on the given time, and I think is critical that he's there. Okay, anyone else have any comments about the governance committee meeting, other than that we'll try and get our notes put together? It just seems like when Amy's not there to take notes, we're not great at doing that either. So she might be critical on our meeting too.
Mr. President, I'm looking at the meeting packet and seeing the February 3rd minutes there.
Okay. Maybe they were added after I looked through.
President Ziegler,
Yes.
that actually brings up a question. Are you working off of the same agenda that we had when we at our pre-agenda meeting?
You know, I have an agenda printed out, and it's possible that I printed the wrong one.
Okay.
But I've noticed that a couple of the dates are wrong.
Yeah,
But
so
it's
it's
the
the
only
one.
agenda I have. So it's, maybe I should just let you tell us what's next, because that's the agenda I printed out. Seems to be lacking as far as it hasn't been recently updated.
Yeah, so that's a governance committee report. Audit and finance is next. Here, I'll just share my screen. You can utilize that. There, can you see that now, President Ziegler?
Committee reports, oh, audit and finance report. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, you know, when I was reading through it in the board packet, I thought that was on there. I'm sure that was on there. So I somehow, when I printed it, I got the wrong one. Okay, audit
think
and
it's on
finance
mine.
report next on our agenda. Who's going to give the audit and finance report?
Manager Crafton, one of you.
I'll make
Trying
a
to get
couple comments.
unmuted. I thought Terry took some notes, basically. Basically, we just kind of went line by line through the budget and discussed it. So there wasn't, it was a more of an understanding of where we are and what we've got and what needs to be changed, but
I think I was the official note taker.
okay,
I can make a couple comments if you like.
that would be great. Thanks.
So I guess number one is we're going through the various reports and financial statements and seeing some disconnects with like the 10-year budget. And these are some of the things I think we actually discussed at our workshop meeting a couple weeks ago. So it's not, I don't think I'm saying anything new here, but there's some discussion about the handling of the per diems and whether or not the board of managers are employees or something other. And I think I have in my notes that I referenced the watershed district handbook, which specifically mentions that the current regulations for watershed districts say that managers are to receive a 1099 to include information for per diem as well as expenses during the year. It's still kind of an open question, and I think let's see my notes here. I think Lewis was going to do a little more research with other watersheds to see how it's handled. It's not very clear in the IRS manual, where it basically talks about you're an employee if you work under the control and direction of somebody and that your hours are specified. So anyway, it's something it's scheduled to come up in discussion with RedPath. And I think we just reset the meeting for March 16th, which will continue that discussion. And then there was also some discussion about the subschedules that are in the current budget plan and how they connect or how they're modified or changed over time with the 10-year plan. And I think we've had some discussion about that as well concerning budgets and whether or not you can change a budget during the year. And I think that's about it. So it's an ongoing discussion that we're working on in a couple areas. There probably are a number of things on the list, but I try and check them off one or two at a time. I don't know, Jill or Manager Crafton, if you have any other notes or thoughts on that, or
Other thoughts, I think it's the payroll people that didn't handle that quite right, what we got in terms of what we have to report to the IRS. So, but we can talk about it with RedPath too, but I think we need to figure that out. Yes.
so I think part of it was directed at my comments about the many multi-step process to review and approve and actually pay the per diems. And I think one of the other points was that we needed a common spreadsheet that we all use where we submit to the watershed for reimbursement. And one of the key things that needs to be put on there is something that identifies it with the equivalent of an invoice number, like any vendor would submit, so that we have some internal way to follow the document, both from ourselves as managers and also within the system. Right now, it's just basically a name and a date, and it takes a lot of time to figure out just exactly where we are. So anyway, that's one of the processes that at least I would like to see streamlined, and something that will be continued to be discussed at our next meeting.
I think when Terry scrolled down, it's actually on our agenda towards the bottom.
That is correct, President Ziegler.
Yep. Okay.
Okay,
That's what I have.
so the committee reports, do we accept them as Manager Cook had suggested with a motion, or I know historically we just have gone through them.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook,
I'm I move that we adopt the following resolution. Be it that the Board of Managers hereby accepts the reports and minutes provided by, and then we'll list the committees who provided reports and or minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Smith, is there a legal reason we should be doing this? Or it's just a matter of,
Mr. President, similar to how you accept the staff reports, it's making a record that you've received them and accepted them.
okay, so I'll second the motion as Manager Cook listed it. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Sorry, yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda, and because I have an old agenda, I'm not sure exactly what all was left on the consent agenda. Administrator Jeffrey, can you list the items that are on the consent agenda?
President Ziegler, this should not have changed from when you had it. Left on the consent agenda are obviously the resolution to approve the consent agenda, the February staff report, the February engineers report, the February construction memo, and the approval of permit 2022-075 Eden Prairie Well House 17.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move we accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the accepting the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I move that we amend the, that we adopt the, I move that we amend the proposed resolution, that we adopt resolution number 23-021 with the following changes, those being that the consent agenda consists of, I'm sorry, I got to do my scrolling here, my apologies. Items B, the February staff report, item 6C, the February engineers report. I do not believe there is a construction report, is there?
There is not, you're correct.
Okay, very good. Not list that. And then the final item would be item 6F.
Okay, is that acceptable, friendly amendment?
Yes.
Yes,
Can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith, you're on mute.
On approving consent agenda, Manager Crafton,
yes,
Manager Duval,
yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, I believe that brings us to item E, which was pulled from the consent agenda. The approval of reduction of the financial assurance for the Earhart Farms permit 2021-068. Do we have any motions on
Um,
this item?
I can move that. that reduction of financial assurance amount that were given for permit 2021-068 for Earhart Farms.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I have a question for staff. Has any money or financial assurances been deposited with the district with respect to this permit?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, yes, we have received a letter of credit in that amount, and they want to offer an amendment to that letter then to reduce it to the proposed amount.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
that being the case, I would move to amend the proposed resolutions to provide as follows and resolve that the staff and legal counsel are hereby authorized to release the existing financial assurances, and upon receipt of financial assurances in the amount of $181,500.
Okay, so I'll take that as a, well, I believe you stated a motion. So I'll second that motion. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
On the amendment to the motion, Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
The amendment carries 5-0.
Okay, so the way you worded that, then we still need to vote on the amended.
Now vote on the
No.
original motion as amended.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
On the motion as amended, Manager Crafton,
yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda just disappeared. Oops.
That's too quick. I need to pull up the item.
Adopt resolution 23-23 approving St. Hubert's Water Quality Project Payment Application Number 2. Do we have any motions on this amendment? I'm sorry, on this item?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I'll make a motion, but again, I just want to repeat that we should be having resolutions for all of our items. I believe that is actually called for in our bylaws. That being said, I will make the motion that we approve the payment
Yeah.
application number 2 by Minger Construction, conditioned upon receipt of a signed statement by either the engineer or staff to the effect that, to the best of their knowledge, all of the services for which payment is being requested have been completed. Oh, perhaps I missed that. So let me continue by amending my own motion to repeat 23-023, but retain the condition that the engineer and or staff sign a statement that, to the best of their knowledge and belief, the services for which payment is being requested have been completed in accordance with the terms of the contract.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Smith, it seems like this is proper resolution to document this. Do you have any comments on it?
Yeah, well, as I understand Manager Cook's motion, he's moving to approve this resolution with the added condition that there be a signed statement from the engineer or staff, like Administrator Jeffrey. I believe the packet includes a memo from Administrator Jeffrey that recites that this work for which pay is being requested has been completed, but perhaps Manager Cook is asking that that be a signed statement. And if we could scroll down to the bottom of the resolution, I think that
I'll move over to the packet. They're in two separate locations.
well, at any rate, I think we're getting to a meeting of the minds here with Manager Cook just pointing out this other condition of having either an engineer or the staff sign
So
that statement.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Any further comments? Hearing no comments, can we have a roll call vote? Mr. Smith, please?
On adopting the resolution as amended, Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, that brings us to the action items. The first one now is the accepting the January treasurer's report. Do we have a motion on this item?
President Ziegler, I'd like to move the acceptance of the treasurer's report as submitted.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions, comments?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
so I have a couple of questions and comments. First of all, we'll start with the cash disbursement sheet. I'd like to know what the payment to the city of Eden Prairie entails.
President Ziegler, managers, that was a grant distribution for the water conservation.
And I'm sorry, I don't recall what that is. Could you?
Oh, wait, actually, this is present. This isn't for the water resources. This was their chloride grant. They put smart sensors into their roadways, some of their pavement surfaces, so that they would know the temperature of the surface, so they could determine the correct salt application and material for that surface at that temperature. This funding is reimbursed to the grant, which has been submitted to Bowser for payment and should be coming within the next 60 days.
If I can continue, I have a few more questions, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
So there's the line item for Regents of the University of Minnesota. Could you just briefly just illuminate me on what that was for.
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, this is the remainder of the pond study that they did. So this was that final payment in 2022 after delivery of the final report. And they will be here in March, this March, to present their findings to managers. President
Ziegler.
Manager Kraft.
Yeah, so this is the one we did with John Gulliver, right? Excuse me.
That is correct.
And Mr. President, I just follow up.
Manager Cook.
So I just curious again, so you have it broken down and itemized that these are 2022 invoices being paid. Is there even though we're paying them in the month, is there a reason for making that distinction?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, if I understand your question, we are making the distinction that it came out of the 22 budget because that's when the invoice was, or the work was done and the invoice was provided. So these are 22 expenses, but didn't show up until the 23 report.
So if I can, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And they were accounted for because we had the invoices. They were accounted for in the budget that is presented to the managers.
Okay, so, well, it's fine you broke it out, I guess. It just, I'm not sure why. It really kind of misstates, I think, a little bit the actual disbursements that we made in January by subtracting those. But I think another issue to be brought up with the accountants. Given it being early in the year, I'll just again repeat, I don't believe that we are doing proper accounting when it comes to the visa accounts. I've made that statement before, and I asked the Accounting and Finance Committee to look into this. And if the accountants are willing to sign a letter saying that that's consistent with generally accepted accounting principles and government accounting principles, then I'll be fine with it. But I've had too many accountants say basically it's not proper accounting, although some have said, well, they just turn their heads to it, which I don't believe is a good practice. So all that being said, I have nothing further.
I don't recall, or we did have a motion and a second on this already. Any further discussion?
Yeah, President Ziegler.
Yes, Manager Kraft.
So at this point in the year, that's when we're trying to sort out what was accrued and earned in 22 and what got, but like this one where the report didn't come until later. We didn't pay the invoice on time, but the work was actually done before. But in terms of the audit, we have to separate out what's 22 and what's not. So that's why there are no notations on this cash disbursement report.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
that reminds me or of a potential issue. If we're paying these now in February and they're 2022 invoices, I believe we are obligated to pay interest unless we have a contract that waives those, or not waives them, but provides that there will be no interest on that basis. And so I would again request that the Accounting and Finance Committee look into that issue, because we've had that come up a couple of years ago.
President Ziegler.
Manager Crafton.
So we're paying this in a timely fashion. It's just, we didn't receive notification that it was okay to pay it till we got the report. So I don't believe there's any problem here.
President Ziegler.
Administrator Jeffrey.
Yeah, if I may speak to this, the University of Minnesota Regents one was unique. They sent us an invoice for I forget what the exact figure was, but 48,000 or some figure. We spent the better part of 60 days going back and forth about what that number should be. So we did not receive the corrected invoice until later in the year. So, we are still within that time frame, but I understand Manager Cook's point.
Now, Mr. President,
Manager Cook,
I don't see how you can have an invoice for 2022 and have payment more than 60 days after the end of 2022 fall within the requirements of the statute. And that's why I suggest that the Accounting and Finance Committee look into that along with the accountants and auditors.
So, Mr. President,
Manager Dwell,
Mr. Cook, if it's just a comment on the process, it's still not totally clear to myself in terms of how we're doing this, but, and even if you read the red path statement that comes out each month that goes with the financial statements, it really, and again, even that is a little bit confusing, and it basically talks about how the format for our monthly financial statements doesn't necessarily follow GAAP or the generally accepted accounting principles, and the format has been designated by the Board of Managers to help us make more informed decisions. And then it goes on a little bit further to describe at the very bottom, well, the last three paragraphs basically describe what we're doing. And I'm hopeful, at least in my mind, when we meet with Redpath at the end of the month here, to get a little bit more description of exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. And the very bottom paragraph, it talks about that the treasurer's report is presented on a modified accrual basis, which means expenses are accounted for when accrued. So technically, it shows up as an expense and it incurred in December, it should be showing up as an expense for December. And whether or not it's an accounts payable is not relevant.
Mr. President.
And but the revenues are accounted for on a cash basis, meaning we don't count revenues until we actually receive them. If we received an invoice in December, but didn't pay for it in December, we would treat it as an expense in December, even if it was not paid until January, February, or March of the following year. So this is a little bit confusing here, and I expect or anticipate that some of this goes back a ways in terms of the exact format of the monthly financial statements.
Mr. President.
Manager Duvall, are you finished?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Cook.
Well, and my comment, first of all, wanted to understand why these subtractions, why we'd have subtractions when it's actually a disbursement in January. It's not very, or disbursement for January, not very accurate. But my second point has nothing to do with the formatting. It has to do with the statute that says invoices are to be paid, I believe it's within 45 days, otherwise you owe interest. And that is the number one point that I think the accountants and the auditors and the Accounting and Finance Committee should be looking at. The formatting of the statement, and I agree, we can make it any way we want to. I'm not sure, as I said, I don't know why we would call out the 2022 invoices, but that doesn't necessarily do any harm, except for it understates exactly how much we dispersed in that month. So those are my comments.
Okay, any further comments before we vote on the just payment of the bills?
Yeah, I
I'm
guess
sorry,
the only
treasurer's
other point that I would make is that we want to make sure that we pay what we owe and not what we don't owe. So that was why our administrator Jeffrey was explaining that they were going back and forth with with the U to figure out what it was we were paying for and if it was what we had signed up to pay. So anyway, are we ready? Okay, I already moved that we accept the report. Have we got everything we need?
I believe we do. Can we have a roll call vote for accepting the treasurer's report, Mr. Smith?
Yes, Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
No,
Manager Pedersen,
Yes,
President Siegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay, the next item is approving paying of the bills.
Yep. I moved that we pay the bills. I don't remember what
I'll second.
the resolution number is, but
23022.
thank you.
Any questions or comments on the resolution of paying of the bills? Can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
On paying the bills, Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
yes,
Manager Cook,
yes,
Manager Pedersen,
Yes,
President Siegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next item is authorize administrator to enter into an agreement with 9 Mile Creek Watershed District. This agreement, with the staff that we need to be able to try and keep up with our stuff a little better, and that they need the shared staff person.
Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
A couple of things. One, I note that at least I didn't see, I don't believe I saw a resolution to go along with this. Again, that's one of the requirements under our bylaws. But importantly, I move that we lay this over. We, at least according to my notes, only recently received that without adequate time to review it. And, based on experience dealing with such contracts, I'm not of the mind to approve a contract I haven't had time to review. So that's my motion, lay it over until the next meeting, unless we want to call a special meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Hearing no second, the motion fails for lack of a second.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the agreement between 9 Mile Creek Watershed District for a shared office assistant.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
so I have a question as to whether or not the Personnel Committee has reviewed this contract.
Mr. President, we have not reviewed this contract. I would assume that the reason why we're paying legal staff to help us is to help us with legal matters such as this. We've looked at the job. We've looked at, we talked about the sharing a bit. So what's behind this contract, yes, we've talked about and we've looked at and we've discussed. But the actual contract, I would leave that up to our legal help.
No, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
it needs to be saying, but we all know the old adage about assume. And if you don't read the contract, you don't know what's in it. You don't know if it's consistent with what the purpose and the terms of doing this. And I quite frankly don't think it would be responsible to vote on an agreement such as this without at least having read it and have the input of the Personnel Committee. I mean, if we have a reason to have a Personnel Committee, I think this is one one of the reasons. And, you know, I'll just say, we shouldn't be voting on something we haven't reviewed and had an opportunity, a decent opportunity to review and discuss.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and perhaps Mr. Smith wants to weigh in. This agreement was prepared, maybe not by you, but at least under your team. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, Mr. President, managers, this really is taking your direction to, and the direction from the 9 Mile Watershed District to seek a sharing of services whereby the Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek Watershed District is the employer of a person. And as the agreement spells out, Riley will provide services through that person to the 9 Mile District. The agreement basically follows our template for professional services agreements, and it's informed by other services sharing arrangements like the soil and water conservation districts have with the watershed district.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
all due respect to, to Mr. Smith. One, we don't even have a summary of what the terms are. People haven't read it. Everybody knows I'm a lawyer. I would never want to have a client approve something that they haven't read, not only for their own benefit, but for the benefit of the lawyers. And even more so in this case is because, as I understand it, Mr. Smith's firm represents both parties, which, if I'm correct, I still have the position that I believe, it's a non-waivable conflict. And if not waivable, it can only be waived on appropriate notification with the party and advice to the parties, which I don't believe we've received. And it's just not a good business practice.
Mr. President,
Mr. Smith?
if the managers feel that they're not familiar with the terms of the agreement or need further time to read it, to understand it, we certainly respect that wish of the board. You did, as a board at your last meeting, specifically waive the question of conflict of interest. And so did the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District Board. I'm happy to review this. The key to this really working is for the staff, the administrators of the 2 watershed districts to have a good working understanding for how this is going to operate on a regular basis. But again, I'm happy to answer more questions, or if you wish more time to review it, it's really to the pleasure of the board.
President Ziegler.
Manager Crafton?
So we went through this last month and we talked about the fact that we're going to invoice them. They already set the percentages of how the time's going to be allocated. I thought we had a pretty thorough understanding of exactly what the substance was of the agreement. So I'm perfectly comfortable with, after that discussion we had last month or whenever that was, accepting this.
I concur.
And I concur
Okay.
as well.
Any other comments before we vote? Can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
No,
Manager Pedersen,
Yes,
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay. The next item is to confirm the date of the Duck Lake Bridge ribbon cutting ceremony.
President Ziegler, managers, I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a second so I can find the email with the 3 dates. But Eden Prairie City Council met to discuss the dates that they would like to hold the ribbon cutting ceremony. Lori Hack from the city reached out to me with those 3 dates. And one of them that got crossed out because it was the last day of school. So the 1st of June or the 6th of June, it would be in the afternoon. I just want to know if you have a preference for one of those 2 dates. That's June 1st or June 6th. June 6th would be the day before a board meeting. I don't think that should matter much, but it might be more apt for everybody to be around then.
Either works for me.
President Ziegler,
June 1st or June 6th are the options.
That is correct.
Manager Crafton,
is this an evening event or a daytime event?
It'll be an afternoon event.
Okay, then that either one should be fine.
either one works for me as well.
And me, myself, same either.
Manager Cook? Do you have a preference on
It's
this?
a long ways out. I'll just have to see how my schedule develops.
Okay,
So if the board is okay with it, then I will let Eden Prairie know that either date is acceptable to the Board of Managers, and to give us as much lead time as possible for when it will be.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
I wonder if we might ask them for a agenda or tentative agenda as soon as they have one, so we might want to comment on it depending on, who might say what when. And I'm sure everybody understands what I'm saying.
Yeah, President Ziegler.
Yes,
Managers, yes, I know they're trying to coordinate with a number of different entities, ourselves, Eden Prairie School, and the Duck Lake Association. And once they have that a little more solidified, yes, they will be putting together a program or agenda for that day, which I'm certain they will share with us. And I'll make that available to the managers as soon as I have it.
do we need to vote or just accept consent?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I'd like to suggest that we have Administrator Jeffrey try to be as, I guess, involved as possible, given the fact that, this district is putting in a huge chunk of money toward this project. And I just want to make sure that, our participation is commensurate with our contribution to this project. Because I believe that's important, and I think that maybe our head of E&O might want to have some conversations with the city of Eden Prairie. Whether we have banners. I don't know if the school's going to have the band out or what, but I think it's important that we look at the recognition of our contribution to this project, despite the fact that I voted no.
I can just picture the marching band going over the bridge. That'd be cute.
There's enough room.
Well, yeah, we paid enough money to have a wide bridge. Yeah, I think they should march up and down a couple times maybe. And we should have people fishing off the pier, and we should have a prize for people with the biggest fish, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe have some hot dog stand out there or something like that. You think I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but I am serious to a degree. I mean, it is a lot of money. It's a significant, again, and like I said, I voted against it, but if we're putting that kind of money in there, the people should know, you know, what went into putting this project together and the reasons why it was as extensive as it was. And so I don't think we should make short shrift and have 15 minutes and the mayor cuts a ribbon and we're gone. So those are my 2 cents.
Is there going to be a plaque to go along with the ceremony?
President Ziegler, managers, I don't know. I know that there is the signage that was placed onto the bridge, but I'll find out more details and share them. I will try and have more information for you at the next workshop in a couple weeks here. I'll at least reach out and get whatever they have.
Sounds good to me. Again, do we need to have a motion so there's clarity in what we're asking staff to do?
Well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I never have a problem with doing a resolution, so I move that we authorize staff to solicit information and work with the city of Eden Prairie regarding the agenda, format, etc. of the bridge opening ceremony, given the district's significant contribution to this project, and to bring the information back to us for our consideration.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I guess I can second it. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Smith, please?
Yes, Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is discussion items. This schedule of workshop topics. I believe there was something in the board packet on that.
Yep. So President Ziegler, managers, if you can see my screen, I'll make it a little better without losing it. So really, like for instance, Manager Crafton contacted me today. I know there are other things that individual managers want on here, so I'd really like the board to fill in, like, this is missing and we as a board agree that it should be on here. So I took things straight from the governance manual that I know we have to have, plug those in on the dates that we have them. Presenters that I have had lined up to come in, for instance, Professor Gulliver from the U of M. And then we want to have Brandon come in and speak about our flood risk program work that we've been doing with the city of Eden Prairie. And other things are the work plan, and that's up again, that's out of the governance manual. So this is what I've had. I've tried to put what I think would be the tentative time, and then I would like to, because there's been a lot of discussion about where are we at with projects, what's going on with budget, to just close every workshop with just a 10 or 15 minute quick, just kind of rundown of the projects and the status they're at. I guess I would just like a manager's thoughts, or if you would just like to take this schedule and start penciling it, sent it all to you as an Excel spreadsheet. So you can start populating it with things you want. I just want anything else that's added to be at the consensus of the board, so that that we're utilizing the time the way the board best sees it be.
Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
Well, thank you for doing this, Administrator Jeffrey. This is a great start over the lack of schedule previously. And so I just like to suggest that we funnel comments to to Administrator Jeffrey, excuse me, and then perhaps we could actually take some time at on the 16th, maybe you could just synthesize it and we could, so we would look at it, have a second take at it, and then we could maybe a confirmation at the next regular meeting if we think we need to do that. But I think this is a great start. You know, I got some questions and, you know, suggestions. I'm sure everybody else does. So that's my suggestion that we do that. Oh, and also, you know, I don't know if this, I just happened to see Sharon, she has her hand up, but excuse me, Ms. McCotter. You know, but maybe the CAC wants to say, hey, here's some subjects we'd like you guys to tackle at a workshop, et cetera. So I'm finished. Thank you.
I think I know where Miss McCotter is going. Where is the joint session?
Well, that is one thing. I was going to say, when you mentioned earlier about status of the reports or of the projects, this is just my personal opinion, but I absolutely loved when we had the tour last year and you had the little booklets or papers and you had a visual status. And there were like 5 different levels of where the project could be. You know, it's in planning, it's in execution. I forgot all of them, but very basic, very easy. And, you know, I guess it depends who's at these workshops, but I think if you have a common, how do I say, rating scale of the steps, then everybody can kind of help. It's easy to see. Do you know what I'm saying? If you use the same scale every time instead of getting really granular, because you may have people at some of these workshops that it doesn't mean a lot, but if they can see, oh, wow, they got a lot in the planning part, or wow, they're executing a lot right now, it might help to tell a bigger story. So that's just my opinion. But yes, I know. And then Terry, I don't know if any of the other things that when we gave you ideas, you asked for ideas about things and we sent them and you said you were going to be incorporating them into a plan.
So
And those were, some of them were from the MAUD workshop.
Yeah.
I mean, not the MAUD, you
conference.
know,
Yep,
conference,
yeah.
sorry.
The salt
Is that
stuff.
where these items would be?
Yep.
Those items?
Yeah, so that
Okay.
President Ziegler, I apologize. Managers, if I'm not mistaken, you're talking about, for instance, the better design for salt use initiatives, things of that nature.
Yeah.
President Ziegler.
Manager Crafton.
So I had talked on numerous occasions about the fact that Lee Freylake, who's a forest ecologist at the U, has been doing research on urban forests and what they're able to sustain and contribute. And I had talked to Administrator Jeffrey about this, and at the time that we talked about it, he suggested February or March as dates when we could invite, excuse me, Professor or Dr. Freylake in. If we can't do that until April, that's fine, but I would like to get it on the schedule.
Yeah, so President Ziegler, managers, yeah, what I would suggest is what Manager Cook suggested. If the managers take this, send to me any other topics they want to see in there, any other speakers. I'll put it all into this in a way that doesn't have us spending 4.5 hours at a workshop, and have the managers make a decision of you know, either culling some out because it's becoming too burdensome or just approving it.
So I think we should also let the CAC make recommendations. And, you know, if we're getting too many and maybe we need to have them on a list to get into this schedule, you know, when it's available. I don't believe we need to have the schedule full at the beginning of the year. I think having some open spots is not a problem. But you know, if we've got things we want to get in here, we should have a list of the things that we'd like to see in our workshops. And I think as far as joint, the CAC is welcome to all of these workshops, right?
Of course.
Okay. And just for my own, is EHAP, is that the healthy soil?
Yeah, that's the ecological health assessment plan, which is going to
Okay.
look at a holistic view of natural resources. Yes.
Okay. I'm glad to see that's in there.
And that will be, President Ziegler, managers, just kind of a brief update on that. In fact, I'll probably talk about a little bit at the workshop, but we're working right now to put together a technical advisory panel, the work schedule. So, and there are going to be intermediate meetings before that. But this will be a much heavier lifting workshop. We'll really be getting the input from the managers on it.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
my one comment about the workshops is that I think it's imperative that we get any materials having to do with the workshop on the same timely basis as we get materials for the meeting at the beginning. I'll be honest with you, it doesn't, it's difficult for me just to sit in a meeting and listen to a bunch of things without having had some type of materials, introductory summaries, etc., and or references sufficiently beforehand to review, so I can, at least have a educated, be educated enough to listen and maybe understand and participate in the discussions. And I don't know about anybody else's schedule, but to be honest, hate to say it, but weekends are really my only time to be able to focus enough attention at one time on these projects. Just same thing with the meeting packets for our regular, meeting. I really like to see, really need to see them, come out on Friday, so that I have the weekend to look at them, because, my weekday can be, nearly impossible to have time to address, the items on the board, especially as we get into the very busy season with many permits, etc. So those are my comments.
Okay, do we have any other comments on this? Or I believe Administrator Jeffrey has
I guess I would
received our input.
like to add,
Manager Crafton?
so we haven't done a whole lot with the master water stewards, or whatever they're called these days. And so that was one of the reasons, was there might be projects that could be done in the big woods that would allow some restoration, but we'd need to know that before we got into summer, so that they could plan ahead if that's something that there might be some mutual benefit with some of those projects. And I mean, the woods are an important part of our landscape. So that was the rationale.
Good. Any further comments on the schedule of workshops?
So President Ziegler, should we be getting our ideas to Terry before our next workshop on the 16th? Is that the plan?
That is the plan.
All righty. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is process per diem claims as a vendor check.
Yeah,
guess I'm not
President
sure
Ziegler,
who's-
managers. So there's been a lot of talk, and Manager Duval did a really good job actually introducing it. Are you employees or are you vendors? How could it be treated? We've had some discussions with Mr. Smith, and he talked about the, I guess I'll call it nebulous nature, for lack of a better word, in that there are different districts handle it differently. I don't really care one way or the other. I just need the managers to come up with, here's the system that we want to use. I need it to be legal and go from there. Manager Val has pointed out that issuing a per diem is 14 steps, Manager Val, that we go through. And so So it's not an efficient process. If there is a way to make it simpler, such as, having it just be issued with our other checks, monthly checks, without going through payroll and then having the managers responsible, for doing their own taxes with a 1099 or whatever the case would be. That's great too. Happy to do that. But I need the managers to kind of decide how they want to do it, at what intervals they want to do it, and we'll accommodate that.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook,
I'm going to move that we authorize Administrator Jeffrey, the Accounting and Finance Committee, and Mr. Smith to research the issues regarding payroll payment, employee versus vendor, and come back with a report to us as to their recommendations as to how we should address not only payroll, but there are significant legal issues that are decided upon whether or not you're an employee versus a vendor. And I'll add that based on my knowledge is you can be an employee for one purpose and not an employee for another purpose. But there are significant employment issues that I think should be addressed. And so that's my motion, that we have these three entities, authorize them to do the research and come back to us with their findings.
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
So I'll just add, Mr. President. So I went through a kind of a brief review of this when I started getting into this further, and I counted about 15 steps, 6 approvals, and 3 external reviews. So this should be streamlined down to about a 3 or 4 step process maximum. We need to comply with the rules, and there are a couple of rules that are a little bit different for watersheds compared to other businesses. But there's a way to do this much simpler, and I totally agree with Mr. Cook's recommendation that we come back with something, because I think it'll lead to maybe other issues as well in terms of how we're doing things. And I think with so many steps, what happens in the system is that we introduce errors where we're looking to have internal controls in all these different areas. And by having so many different handoffs and steps, we actually introduce more potential errors in the system, as well as making it cumbersome. So anyway, I think it's good that we do this.
Okay, any further discussion? Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Manager Crafton,
yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next agenda item, if you put up the agenda, I'll be able to see it. Okay, closed session. I believe we need a motion to go to closed session.
I'll move we go to closed session to discuss the potential acquisition of the property in Spring Road in Eden Prairie.
I'll second the motion. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
perhaps Mr. Smith could weigh in on this, but I take a pretty narrow reading of the exceptions to the open meeting law. And to me, unless we are discussing price and terms, I believe we should be having this open discussion as to whether or not we're even if we're interested in it at all, what we would plan to do with it. I don't believe those are matters of closed session. So before voting on this, I think we need to clarify exactly what we're going to be discussing in closed session. And besides that, I would need to have, before I would even vote on anything, I would need to have some summary memo, etc., about who, what, where, when, why, and how. So,
Mr. Smith, do you want to answer Manager Cook's concern?
Yes, Mr. President, managers, I'll begin by quoting from the open meeting law so that the text of the statutes kind of top of mind for everyone. So this is in Minnesota statutes, chapter 13D, section 13.05. And there's a series of meetings in subdivision 3, of which meetings may be closed. And one of them is to develop or consider offers or counteroffers for the purchase or sale of real or personal property. So I understand the purpose of this discussion to be in the development phase, which is envisioned in the statute. So I don't believe that the statute is narrowly construed to only allow for a closed session to specifically discuss specific terms of price, but also to have a closed session for the purpose of developing a potential offer or counteroffer. So as I understand the discussion, at least as it's proposed, that is within the scope of what the statute allows for a closed session. And of course, once we're in closed session, if it seems to me we've somehow strayed and are outside that scope, I will be sure to alert you.
well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
Mr. Smith, can you read that? Well, first of all, let me just find the statute. I don't do well, I guess, just hearing things orally. I can look it up. But while I'm looking that up, DO5, you know, based on your prior discussions about open meeting laws, et cetera, I certainly came away with the predilection, or the fact that the Minnesota Supreme Court has a predilection to hold things to be open to the public unless it clearly falls within the scope of being closed. So you're talking about, well, one, there's about security meetings, but you're talking about 3.
Subdivision
Not even
3C3.
Yes. Right. Okay. So to develop or consider offers or counter offers. My point is that we haven't even decided whether or not we want to consider buying it. So we're not in that scope. It seems to me if we decide and have a debate that, you know, maybe we should, you know, buy this or consider doing it, seems to me at that point, we decide we're interested in it, then we go and develop an offer. But we haven't even decided if we're interested. And so I think that having a closed session beyond before reaching a decision that we're interested in buying the property and why and what for, we shouldn't be going into a closed session.
Manager Cook?
Excuse me, and maybe I have just a follow-up question about this are is there some urgency about doing anything?
So Manager Cook, I think we have discussed this property quite a bit. And I think whether or not we can make an offer depends on how much the offer would have to be. And, you know, you wouldn't say we can make an offer unless you knew what the offer was going to be and how it fits in our schedule. And the first thing we kind of need to know is, can we afford it? And, you know, there's been some work done by staff to come up with some methods for financing and potential grants and things like that. So I think we're there. We need to decide, you know, it's not going to be cheap, but, you know, how much will it be? And is it something we want staff to continue to pursue or not? And I think the price is a big part of it. All right, can you make a decision on whether you want them to continue working on this without knowing how much we would potentially spend?
Oh, Mr. President,
Manager
first of
Cook?
all, you must be talking about the royal we, because if I believe I'm correct, we've had about as much, if we've had 15 minutes worth of discussion on this parcel, I'll be shocked. And you can go back through all the minutes of the recordings of the meetings. There was a discussion briefly about these two pieces of property might be available. And there wasn't even a discussion. There was just a mention. There was no debate. There was no further this. Well, you are obviously, I'm sorry, but you must be well down the road, a lot farther than I am, and certainly haven't discussed this because, one, I don't even know what we were going to be using for, and we should have a discussion about if we did acquire this, what would we use it for, et cetera, et cetera. And on that token, there are other parcels, you know, within our district that we should consider. And so I'm just saying this is premature to close this meeting, to have a closed session. And so at a minimum, we should be having a memo as to these properties and what the thoughts are about what we would do with the properties. And what would be the feasibility of what we may want to do with the properties. I don't know what they are. I'm happy to discuss them, but they're not appropriate for a closed session.
Okay, any other discussion before we vote? Can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
No.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay, so staff, can you put us in?
Coming in. Bring up my screen for you, Manager Ziegler.
Okay, do we do a summary, or what do we do for now that we're back in open session? Is there anything we need to do, Mr. Smith?
No, Mr. President, the summary is for the performance evaluations.
Okay,
So not needed. Thank you.
okay. So the next item, it looks like, is the manager reports. And I did attend the legislative days. well, one of the 2 days. And it was very educational. We did have discussions with multiple legislators, and we had some attend the meet and greet at the end. And it looks like we're getting much better movement on our top priority items, which for the Minnesota Association of Watershed Districts is the salt agenda and the getting equal or increased funding for the people outside the metro area that have been capped at a certain dollar amount for over 20 years now and hasn't gone up. So anyway, that's about all I had on that.
Just a reminder, it's Minnesota watersheds now, no longer mod.
Yeah, I didn't make the agenda, so. Administrator reports looks like is next.
Yeah,
Mr. President, excuse me.
Manager Cook.
You know, I have a report, but I hate to say that it's maybe lengthy and in the form of questions of things that, you know, I don't see. I know it's getting late, and I'm wondering if we could take a few minutes at the workshop just for me to, you know, speak my piece, because they're not action items.
Okay. Well, that's fine with me as long as the other managers agree. I'm hearing an overwhelming no comment.
Is that,
Otherwise, I can take up 30 minutes if you'd like, but I would just as soon not to tonight, given the hour.
could you send a written report ahead so we could at least start reading it?
Sure, I can send you my, yes, I can do that. Sure. I will send it to Administrator Jeffrey, and then he can proceed how he wants to proceed on that.
Okay, so we're good to move on then to the administrator reports.
President Ziegler, managers, I really don't have anything additional at this time. We've talked about most of the things that I've been working on. We'll have at the next workshop, I will have my work plan for you, as was discussed at my review. And beyond that, you know, we're moving forward with some of the initiatives, and got nothing at this time. Oh, we did reschedule the Lake Summit, so that will be March or April 11th, excuse me. So, but we have not rescheduled the volunteer yet. Probably wait until we have warmer weather, do something outside.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
as you probably recall, several hours ago, I moved on the consent agenda to leave the acceptance of the reports, but reserve the opportunity to ask some questions. And again, given the late hour, I think what would be easiest if perhaps I just forwarded to Administrator Jeffrey some comments I had on the staff report and the engineer report, and perhaps he could either respond to them or take 5 minutes to address them at the workshop.
I can do either one.
Okay.
Now, I leave that to your discretion when you get it, Administrator Jeffrey, however you'd like to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I don't see the agenda anymore, but
Oh, hold on. We're to legal counsel report.
okay,
We have nothing to add. I think just I can say that the Friends of the Springs matter, it continues on appeal and briefs will be submitted, but nothing else to report on that.
Okay, the next item is upcoming board topics.
And you have that schedule of workshops, and that is really kind of it.
Okay,
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
just a quick question for Administrator Jeffrey, if I could.
Sure.
Yeah, Administrator Jeffrey, do you have any sense right now of the a number of permits that we may be looking at? Maybe it's too early to have any sense of that, but
That we'll have coming forward in the following year.
yes. Yeah.
Well, as you pointed out, we'll see what the interest rates do for development, but I would anticipate in the 90 to 110 range, somewhere around there.
Thank you.
Okay, so upcoming events, Administrator Jeffrey, you were going through those.
Yeah, we have the workshop coming up on the 16th. We discussed at that workshop, we will be having Professor Gulliver will be speaking of the pond study and his finding of different maintenance techniques and its efficacy at increasing phosphorus sequestration or vice versa, release of phosphorus. We will be talking about my work plan, and we'll talk about projects, and it sounds like we'll have a report from Manager Cook, perhaps, depending on, or from me on Manager Cook's comments. Rutherford Lake Association, like I said, we rescheduled that for April 11th. I knew as soon as, like, washing your car before it rains, or washing your car and making sure it rains, by canceling it, the weather didn't get bad until later. So Riley Purgatory Summit, Steph Maxwell, did we hit upon a date for that yet? I don't think we have.
Yeah, it'll be on the end of March at some time. We haven't picked the exact date.
Yeah, we had a date, and then some,
Yeah.
it ran concurrently with some other professional.
Yeah.
And then the volunteer recognition, I guess I should put in June, we'll have the bridge opening ceremony.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
Is it possible, Administrator Jeffrey, I mean, do you have a synopsis of the volunteer recognition? Are we gonna give out some plaques or anything, or?
We had, Staff Forbes isn't here. Yeah, we had a number of different recognitions and accolades. So yes, that was the plan, to give them something to take that shows our appreciation.
Okay, very good, thank you. I have
Okay,
nothing.
and the Lake Summit, that's not something that the managers are expected to attend, or?
Correct. I would like to host that in person, and given our current situation, that might put a damper on that.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, it sounds like May 11th is going to be the official day that the President of the United States is saying this is over.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
So it'll be for the board to discuss how they want to proceed. We will accommodate either way. Oh, and I will have the two different board configurations, two different quotes at the next meeting. That was
good. Excuse me, Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
Minister Jeffrey, could you just put that on the agenda? So make sure we cover that. You're right. I mean, at least time vis-a-vis the president is running out, but as I stated before, I think our statute gives President Ziegler and legal counsel a lot of leeway in deciding whether or not we have to have in-person meetings.
Oh, you want the COVID response? Thank you.
Yeah, covered, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook,
there's nothing else. I will move to adjourn.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
night.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Take
all.
care.
All right. Bye-bye.